Riddle House is located in Florida and is one of the most famous haunted houses in the United States. Its history began in 1905 in the city of West Palm Beach when this house was built by the owner of a local hotel, Henry Flagler, near the Woodlawn Cemetery. Initially, this Victorian-style mansion served as a morgue and a funeral home was located in it, while in those years its walls were painted brightly colored, making the house the nickname Spotted Lady. The Woodlawn Cemetery was the burial place of wealthy elite people who were put in coffins with an expensive watch, gold buttons on jackets and jewelry. Soon, the Woodlawn Cemetery began to attract grave robbers who dug up graves to pick up jewelry. To prevent this, a special cemetery watchman was hired who settled in the same house of Riddle. By the way, in addition to the fact that this house was initially associated with a frightening and deadly theme, around the same years there were rumors that it was built in an old Indian cemetery. A few more years later, another significant event happened. In the 1920s, a cemetery guard named Buck was brutally killed by unknown people. After that, began to arise stories that his ghost still makes rounds among graves, and many people supposedly saw him. Despite all this ominous halo, soon the city manager Carl Riddle bought this house and remade it into his apartment. However, soon, according to rumors, he began to pursue a variety of paranormal phenomena, poltergeist and ghosts. When the Great Depression began, Riddle and his employees had serious financial problems, and soon one of them was brought to such a state that one day he came to visit Riddle, climbed into the attic and hanged himself on the rafters. After that, the housekeeper and members of the Riddle family began to see his ghost from time to time, and all other paranormal phenomena began to occur more often and more intensively. Unclear shadows walked around the house, flickering lights flew. It was audible that someone invisible was walking along the ceiling and ringing with chains, and in addition, at night, someone inaudibly whispered. Riddle and his family one day could not stand it and decided to sell the house. But the buyer did not last longer than several years. In the following decades, Riddle's house changed hands and was used for various purposes. It had a district hospital department, a tuberculosis department, and then a branch of a psychiatric clinic. Then a store was opened in it. From time to time they tried to remake it into a private mansion, and in the 1970s, local college students settled here. But in the end the building was closed and abandoned. Nobody lived here in the 1980s and Riddle's house slowly but steadily deteriorated. Then the legends about this house, as a refuge for several ghosts, began to walk throughout Florida and then throughout the United States. No one wanted to buy this house, fearing paranormal activity. At some point, city officials even decided to demolish the Riddle house, but Carl Riddle's nephew John Riddle bought it to preserve as a historic building. And it's not easy to save how to move to a new place in Yesteryear Village, a site conceived as a large open-air museum where you could see what this city looked like at the beginning of the 20th century. There are many buildings of the old era, and according to Riddle's plan, this house will have the place there. Ghosts, however, had a completely different opinion. The builders who were hired to disassemble and transport the house immediately faced many strange incidents. They said that they felt invisible hands on themselves that pushed and kicked them, or even banged their helmets with a hammer. The equipment either broke down or was not clear where it disappeared, and when they began to take off the windows, some of them crashed on their own. Because of all this, the workers were very scared and simply refused to work here, which was why they had to look for others. Carrying Riddle's house took a full 6 months, but in the end it was done. Another strange event happened at the opening ceremony of Riddle's house in Yesteryear Village. Many guests began to report that they saw a couple here in old-fashioned clothes of the beginning of the century, which they mistook for invited actors. However, as it turned out, no one hired or invited such actors. And then someone said that this couple looked exactly like a man and a woman in an old photograph hanging in Riddle's house. Nowadays, Riddle's house continues to see paranormal phenomena. For example, they report objects that fly out of his window, a ghost of an angry woman who appears in the kitchen, a boy who walks in the house, as well as a ghost of an employee who hanged himself. The latter is seen in the attic hanging on the rafters. To prevent people from seeing it, the attic was soon locked. In the house and next to it, people often break down phones, batteries quickly drain, music from the 1920s comes from the attic, something is scratching behind cabinets, and an invisible hand pulls visitors by the hair. Many research teams visited the Riddle house in an attempt to photograph ghosts or a poltergeist here. One of the episodes of Ghost Adventures was also filmed here. Anchorman Zach Bagans recorded the strange sounds of footsteps and the ringing of bells in the house.